What is up, peoples? Happy Saturday. Here we are with another installment of how you can get out in the woods and find Bigfoot using our research. Literally giving you points on the map to get out there, do some research. So you can use our actual data sets that we plot on these maps for you and get out there and do some searching, because that's what I hear from a lot of people is, I want to get out, I don't really know where to go, what to do. So I'm kind of just giving you a guideline across the United States. We're going to try to do every state to the best of our knowledge. We're going to use some maps. This is the ArcGIS map over here on your left that you're currently seeing, where they share, some, I guess, what you would call sighting data, but there's other data banks that we use. And yeah, so we're gonna get into this and see what's what for the state of Illinois. That is our goal. And as you can see on the left hand side here, it seems that most of the sightings seem to correlate on the western side. I would say that that's a congruent statement, that the western side of Illinois has more sightings, more so the southwest as they travel. But what we're going to do is try to find some travel corridors for you, some areas where you can get out there, some areas that aren't so vast. Our goal is to shrink everything down. If you shrink the United States, if you shrink the landmass, if you shrink the travel routes, and do some research in there for a year, I'm sure you're going to find some things just based on our research and what we've learned over the last 11 years. So let's dive in. So just by using a land feature on the ArcGIS sighting map, you can see the lower left corner sort of, there's like a jut out. We're looking sort of right there. Maybe zoom in one more time for you. Right in this region here. We can use that land feature to carry it over, which happens to be right here, just, I would say, northeast of St. Charles, Illinois. There seems to be quite a few sightings in this, from Springfield area down, and we're going to try to attempt to find some locations. So usually using the ArcGIS map, what I did is from this land feature, kind of coming up into this region here, to some of the most prominent areas. That's 66 miles straight up. And then we can go ahead and close it. Let's do it one more time, taking a look. And if we come off of this at a different angle, you're about 80 miles. So that little circumference there, that little area, tends to hold some decent sightings. Then if we come over here, we can kind of do the same thing we were doing on the other map, just carrying that over to a distance of, I don't know, what is that? That's 94, so that's too far. It was 60 something, 66, somewhere in here maybe. Well, there's 69 right off the tip, so let's save that. Just leave that there for a guide, and we'll do it again. So now we've kind of got a region using that land feature that there seems to be quite a few sightings in, up, down, in and out, and we're going to try to figure out why and come up with some locations for you to get in there and do some searching, put up some cameras, do some things, because if we can figure out when they're coming through, that's the whole goal. Minimize everything, use their carbon footprint against them. So using just this other sighting map as reference, if you use the map point here that we drew, so if you kind of go right off this point right here by the 255, just north of where the two red lines meet, the blue dots kind of follow up, they jut to the right, and they go up again. So what we did is basically I plotted this red line up the middle here. As you can see, it falls congruent or really close to the way the sightings move. It's got, it bows out a little bit, but in this region right here, there's quite a few sightings. And it's kind of amazing as you take the sightings from one map, right, that are reported, and you convert them over to, you know, any other map, and I'm just using Earth here, you can see the way the fingers of the woods fall. You can see the way the terrain is. You can see how it connects together from one section to another and where the sightings are. It's really interesting how it falls based on the lay of the land. So another way to get this shrunk down a little bit here, so I want to measure this kind of from here, from this region to here. You're at about 35 miles, where you've got a good zone where they're coming through. I mean, you've got a good 10 sightings in this region here, and you got another cluster kind of up here that I'm clicking on. So that's another area, but I really want to concentrate in the western part of the state first before I get over to the middle. So right off the bat, a couple of things that you're going to notice is this area, this region right here, is really open. A lot of fields. They're almost going to have to cross that from finger to finger. If you don't know what fingers are, they're kind of the ridges and the way the woods juts out. They look like fingers. I can back out if, you know, that's why they call like the Finger Lakes the Finger Lakes. They look like fingers. You can see the red lines, the pathways they follow. Here's a good finger in this region here, between the 16 and the 111. That's definitely probably going to hold some tight sightings. And we're going to try to look at this other finger here down through this region where a lot of sightings seem to be taking place, and it makes sense because if you look at the areas that they're forced to go through, the timber is you know, desolate. It's not really heavy timber. It's just an area where they're going to move through from point A to point B, and that's what we're going to try to narrow down. So one thing I do see is no real area of habitation, no large tract of woods, maybe a little bit down toward the 100 here in the southwest part of the state. By habitation, I mean where they're going to spend a large amount of time. So to me, I'm going to look at this section of Illinois and just say, hey, you know, this is where they're coming through, you know, from another state, etc., on their way to wherever. Because right in here, I don't see any areas where they're really going to hold up for long periods of time. You know, the land is just too broken. Some of the cities are just too large, you know, toward the north. So it would make sense that they're using these fingers to get from point A to point B. So as I teach you here, from what we've learned, so we have a highway right here. We have the 16. This is the 16 that virtually cuts some of the state right in half. What is that, from Litchfield west all the way to, you know, Jerseyville. So at some point, that area needs to be crossed by a Sasquatch. I mean, it just is. When they move, they're moving north to south most of the time. Just based on what we've learned, until they get into their little niche habitats and they can move east, west, wherever they need to go from there in their hubs. But, you know, if you want to call this a migration, let's just use that word. If they're migrating, it's usually north to south. You know, I don't know if it's for mating. I don't know if it's for weather purposes. I don't know if it's for food purposes. Let's just call it what it is here. So this is what we're looking at, is the 16. And there's a few spots, obviously right here is going to be a key spot. You've got a few lines right off the 111 and the 16 near Shipman, just outside of Shipman, that come together. And to me, this would be a region to really pay attention to. So now what I'm attempting to do is tie together some of the points where they come off these fingers. Basically where the timber ends, right here in the middle of your screen. Where do they where is their outlet? Where can they go? What's their, you know, travel path of least resistance, least detection? They're going to look to hit these certain blocks of timber and get from point A to point B. You know, it might be at nighttime, but, you know, cameras can sit out there in any weather, anytime. That's what I tell people. But when we take a look at this, we're going to narrow down these fingers, and then, you know, why I would suspect that these would be, you know, good crossings. So one thing, the 16 is really good, but I'm going to guess that when they cross this region, it's going to be really fast. They're not going to be lollygagging. They're going to try to get into these blocks of timber. And as they come up this finger here, to get to other tracts of land, there's an area right here off of Shipman Road that has some interest to me. Coop Branch, where they may hold up. It's a good area to kind of, cross from region to region. It might be at nighttime, but hey, we narrowed this down on this stretch, where the timber stops. You've got, what do you got? You've got 1.5 miles. So you got a 1.5 mile stretch right here off of Shipman Road. That would play a pivotal point in my research to see, are they spending time near Coop Branch, near some of this timber? Are they just coming through here, on their way to larger tracts? But Coop Branch Creek, I'm guessing that would be a good area to search, to put up, any type of recon, things like that, because at some point during the year, they're going to come through this region. The reason I say that is because they're almost forced into that 1.5 miles to cross Shipman Road, because to the east and northeast, it's all, large open tracts of land. You don't see a lot of timber over here heading toward Plainview. It's just a lot of fields. I mean, yeah, they could use some of these drainages to get to these other fingers, but I'm just using my best intellect on what I've seen. Here again, this is the, well, I think I got it labeled as the 8,000, but I think it's the 16, I'm not sure. Right off of, what is that? Plainview Blacktop Road. Just outside of, what is that, Shad Lake, where Coop Branch comes into. This is a good region where they could cross the road. I would say the west side, kind of in between the houses. Obviously probably done at night, but this is a region where you can get maybe 100, 200 yards off the road on a trail, or find out what's going on and set up shop as they try to, come through from one region to the next. So just heading west a little bit off the 16 near the 111 on one of our lines here. This little region, I think, will be a little hold-up spot for them, because you have two consecutive blocks of timber, not very huge, but we can kind of, this is the area here that we're talking about, right in here. They may hold up there for nighttime as they're going to cross the 16 to hit these little strips and little fingers, and try to hit maybe this block of timber here. If this is, I don't know if this is timber or grass. Well, see, that's a field, so that would definitely all have to be done at nighttime. See, I don't like that whatsoever, but it's possible, because that's where the sightings are, and maybe they're forced to cross these fields, and then, people in these towns, like, what is this, Piazza town, these little townships, maybe they're the ones seeing them, because, they're forced from these fingers through these fields to get to the next, branch, if that's what you want to call it, which would be right in this area here. I mean, the only way they're navigating these fields is if the wheat is high, if the corn is high, then you're not seeing anything, because they can walk straight through it, not have a problem. So maybe this is a summertime area. I'm not even sure when the reports fall, when the sightings fall, what times of year. But in my guess, it would be summertime, because if these are corn crops, wheat crops, high vegetative crops, they can get from one area to another through those crop rows, virtually unscathed. You're not going to see them out in the open. But in the wintertime, when that's all cut down, to knee length or below, they're going to stand out like a sore thumb. But there are a lot of sightings in this region, and you have to just figure out why. And these are some of the reasons. Because they're forced from timber to timber through an area that is just surrounded by fields. So at some point, you got to make a run for it, like me or you. Like, picture yourself being a fugitive, and you're on the run, and you got to get from point A to point B. You're going to make that run, that mad dash. And people near Shipman, I'm guessing, are probably having a lot of sightings, day, night, whatever it may be, because they're going to be funneled down through these regions. and you got Royal Lakes, you got like all these little cities. So this is an area that is hard for them to navigate, and it's almost like they're forced through it, because to the west of the state you've got, you know, larger cities and more broken timber. It's really an ag state. There's just so many fields. I don't know if you've ever taken a plane trip over the state, but you know, it's just, you can see it from the air. It's just all broken up, and you've got some, you know, timber fingers and stuff like that. But um, like Beaver Dam State Park, that would be maybe a little holdup area for them, if they started to, you know, this timber kind of rolls this way for quite a few miles. Um, but I'm guessing that's why, you know, this state has a lot of sightings in that region, because they're just forced through there. They're forced north, technically, up through there, and yeah, they're probably going to the Saginaw State, you know, wildlife area, where there's larger tracts of timber. Totally makes sense now that I see that. So we've got a few points on the map here. We're going to try to get a couple more up near Chesterfield. But yeah, it's very sparse in this area, which is really, it's kind of good, because as you look at it, they have to come through this region. So at some point, if you do your due diligence, you're going to have something transpire, because just the lack of large blocks of timber. All right, so we came up, we're at Cedar Ridge Farm, technically. It's on South Atten Way Road. This is a section where you have some timber to timber, where it narrows down, kind of the same as the creek right down the road. I'm going to put 2 points here that this is where I would be doing some research 100%. Right outside of that farm. And I bet you if you go to this farm right here, somebody in the neighborhood, or if not these people alone, these people here probably heard something, seen something, or know something, based on just living in the area. Because right here, you've got some good pinch points that, you know, even back here, where you've got some ag timber, and then it's not, it's like a marshy area right in the middle, but somebody lives right there, so they, you know, they probably know what's happening, because you have a short span here, unless they're out in the field walking around, which usually doesn't happen. So you've got from the field to the field, you've got a distance of 0.5 miles. So you really narrowed that down to get some cameras in there, because at some point you might just catch one straggling through these regions. You know, it just makes sense. So the next area I would say is right by Wild Pickens Winery, just south on the 111. You have a creek bed through here that, you know, it breaks to the east, and then you have a large block of timber. It's still Branch Creek down south. That whole creek needs to be, you know, a good research area, because they're definitely following that in this region. Maybe that's why people say, hey, they follow the waterways. But right through here, you've got two separate fingers that kind of come together. The lower left off the 111 runs backwards, you know, to all these, runs south to all these blocks of timber. And then you have one off to the east here that runs to the other blocks of timber, and where they converge happens to be right here. And to me, that's just using common sense. This area right here will pay off. I'm almost going to guarantee it. This hub, this right here, that little bit of area right there. So what you want to do is just catch them coming to this road. You know, if you're just set up off the creek where they're forced into a little funnel area, just like deer, just like any other animal, they're going to cross here, you know. They feel safe. That's their whole goal. How can I move around without being detected? You know, you're playing hide and seek. We've said it for years, but now we just got to figure out, you know, where they're going and why they're doing it, and it just makes sense. They could go, you know, north through here, but you're going to run right into somebody's house and property, and to cross the 111 there. That would, in my best guesstimation, that's a really good spot right there off the 111. I wouldn't be surprised if there's been quite a few sightings. We're just, what is that, northeast of Somerville. I'm trying to give you the best locations on the map, guys, where I think you're going to have some Sasquatch movement. and it kind of follows the line, if we're pinching them down. Um, Now, if we head west or east just a little bit, you can see how the timber. Let me show you. Kind of, if we're just guessing, the timber kind of goes like this. Here's a finger, and then we're going to come back here, and we're going to do it again, and we're going to say, well, here's another section of timber. How they can move about. Well, then I try to track that back to some of the best points and pinch points that I can see. Sometimes you can find them, sometimes you can't, and then you just got to keep going, backing it up. But like through here, there's some blocks of timber. But what do we have in common? So we have one thing in common. This creek right here runs right here. This creek, this watershed, I don't know what it is. I do have a road here. The road is Chesterfield Road. This is going to be a good area right here. You've got a type, well, you don't really have an oxbow, but you kind of do. You got some fields. You got this little block of timber that has some fingers that they could, hold up in. I mean, they don't need much. Even if there's 3 of them, imagine 3 people. How much timber do you really need to hide? And if you're gonna try to move east here, I'm just letting you understand my brain and the things that I've seen. They have to come through certain regions, so they might not go toward this body of water right here, right? Because there's houses and there's open fields, but how can they get around that house is what I was looking at, and it happens to be like right here along this creek, right along this byway, where they could, east, west, whatever it is, come into that little corridor, hit that creek. There's 2 other sections right there. That's where I would be doing some research, having some cameras, inconspicuously. They're not going to expect it. They're going to be wary. They're going to be on point because they know these narrow gap areas they're forced through them. Or maybe the larger males or whatever say, hey, I don't give a damn. I'm just going for it right through the field, and that's where you get the sighting. But I'm giving you the best locations to get out here, guys. Again, right down on, what is that, Chesterfield Road, just down the road. If they were to come in off one of these fingers over here, it went the other direction, they're going to try to hit this finger here and get across the best they can, into larger timber. That's their whole goal, is larger timber. If you were trying to hide from somebody, you're not going to usually hide in a cornfield unless it's 8-10 feet high. Then they can move about just like deer, and you'll never even get a chance to see them. But when they cut that corn, like I said, if they're moving through, that's when they're going to be seen. Maybe it is a wintertime area and they have to get across these fields, but in my opinion, here's some of the best locations. I've mapped it out for you for Illinois, from south near Royal Lakes. I think this is, what route did we say this was? Shipman Road by Coot Branch. That right here. This mile was really keen for me. I would be in there doing some research. I'm trying to get you sections in the state, miles apart, but this region seems to be pretty heavy with sightings. So that's why I concentrated on this area. Maybe at another time I'll hit another part of the state. It would just make sense that you could see the way the timber comes up, through the state. I call it fingers. That's just what they're called. And they're going to have to use them. It's a no-brainer. But I hope you like the series, guys. Like, sub, share. I'm sorry they're long, but I just try to walk you through everything so you understand what we've seen, what we do. We're plotting the points on the map for you. I mean, we're giving it to you there. Say, hey, go here. Go set up shop there. Spend your time. Do some research. Spend a year. You're going to find something. You might not find a lot, but you might have an encounter, because what we've learned is through these areas that they move, right? I don't see a lot of structure activity. I see certain things, But structure activity is usually when they're comfortable and they have a lot of time to put things together. Just like you or me, that it would make sense. I'm not gonna just do it willy-nilly, unless there's another reason we don't know about. But um, that's what I would look at. I would say, hey, it makes sense. And if you look at our last state, I believe this is Missouri, you can see where I told you I believe they hold up, which would make sense that they come up through this region just outside of the city, navigating around, larger hubs. And what happens is that, they're probably following the waterways in this area, the best they can. And that's why in this region of Illinois, they're having some, a lot of sightings. It's just it follows congruent. You follow the large blocks of timber, right, and how they have to move. It's just a given. They have to move. They can't stay in one area forever. It doesn't work that way. You wouldn't have a large enough population probably. The food would probably get scarce. They move around. Just like humans, maybe they're social creatures in their own, group setting, and they need to do what they need to do. It's a very primitive thing. But sorry to keep you guys. Like, sub, share. On to the next.